Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. We had quite a few register, which was really lovely. So I know that well, I'm so used to doing webinars for other practitioners. So I say working with a lot, but today's about the general public and about helping your teenager at home. Um, and I've been wanting to do this webinar for quite a while because it's such an important area and it's such a misunderstood area, and being a teenager is really hard, and working with adults, it's still the teenage years that we go back um, to to resolve all of those issues, and they can sit with us for such a long time, our experiences through teenagehood. So it's so important to help our teens through this period, and it's it can be so overwhelming for parents, and I know that. And I have two little ones, so I'm not there yet, but I've been working with teenagers for over a decade, and I was one. And you know, it's just an area which I have so much passion about, because it could be done so much better. And I think the way that schooling is and the way that life is and the pressures that all the parents are under as well, it just gets really hard. And trying to understand that transition from childhood to teenagehood, then through to adult, I think teenagehood is often lost because we go, you're a child or you're an adult. And that's actually not the case. You're a child and then you're a teenager and then you're an adult. And teenagers get a really bad rap for just having bad attitude. And we forget how vulnerable we used to feel as a teenager, and we forget how much overwhelm there is and how much you're just trying to find your place. You know, you try, all day is about trying to find your footing. And as adults, we can easily forget that because life is overwhelming when you're an adult, and you think, oh, it was so easy when we were a teenager. But it wasn't. You know, my teenage years were full of self-hatred and vulnerability and overwhelm. And I see so much of that in the clinic as well. And even like, 5-6 years ago, the school refusal thing wasn't a big thing, and now it seems to be every school's going through that. And you've got these kids and they're labelled school refusal, and they're not. They're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and this is much of what I wanted to talk to today as well. They're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, they're vulnerable, and they're just being told that they're either depressed or they're anxious or they're lazy. And it's really hard to understand what to do in these instances when kids just can't get to school. And it's happening a lot in my clinic, so I guess it's happening out there in a bigger ratio as well. So I wanted to talk through that as well. But if you have any questions, just write them on that chat button, and we can go through that. But I'll start the big talk now. But that's kind of my little intro. But I just want you to take a couple of minutes and just put your hand on your heart and go back to teenagehood yourself. Try and go back into that space of what it actually felt like to be a teenager. So you're thinking usually around 14, 15 years old. And we notoriously, year 8 and year 9 are the worst years of teenagehood. And you go through so much emotional roller coaster through that time. So what you've actually got on a physiological and level at that point is you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is right here. It's your decision making, it's your understanding and then comprehension of the world, and it's how to conduct yourself in the world. And it's rearranging itself. So all the structures that we learn in childhood, we're trying to establish, are they still needed? And so you go back to those behaviours and see if they still work and if they get the same response. And so, I often say to parents, you go 13, you go back to 3, you 14, you go back to 4, and 15, 5, and so on. It's because your brain is trying to understand, okay, right, these are all the defense mechanisms that we put together then. And when I felt this way, this is what happened. And we go back and try and challenge that, to try and figure out then how to conduct ourselves in the world. The problem with that being so busy is it's so full of overwhelm. And so what happens is that when that gets too busy, it shuts down and we kick into fight or flight as a way to take over. So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to go into fight or flight. And some kids will fight and some kids will flight. And it really just depends on the kid as to where they go with that and the day and all that kind of stuff and what else is going on. So that's the one key thing to remember with teenagers, is that it's not about disciplining them. I really truly believe that our parenting kind of ends at 14, as far as you do this because I say you do that, or you do this and then, there's no explanation on top of that, which is often what happens. But our parenting in that way finishes around 14, and we're just there to guide them through life, because they have to start making their own footsteps. And this is what I mean at the beginning, where we haven't got this transition into adulthood right as a society yet, because we're just pushing kids out there and expecting them to deal with a whole lot, or we're not expecting them to deal with anything, or we're not letting them through the failures of life either. So we're jumping too much on them. And they're jumping on each other, and the schools are jumping on them, and society's jumping on them. It's not just the parents' fault. At this age, so there's this spiritual journey that the Chinese call the separation into the ego. And so you come into the world, you're nice cocooned, you're held by mum, you're held by dad, and you get surrounded by the family structure. And Carl Jung described this process as well. And then, through childhood, you emerge as yourself underneath the umbrella of your family. And teenagehood is now an exploration into who am I as a person on my own. So what was his name? I'll find it for you. There's a wonderful writer, and he described it as rather than looking for the vertical identity, so parents or generational than me, you're looking for your horizontal identity. So who am I out in the world? How is the world going to respond to me? And how do I navigate this area as a person of my own out in the world? And so you're taking those baby steps again. When there's a toddler, you're very loving and nurturing with their first steps, and you're cheering, and when they fall, you're like, yay, no problem, get up. But teenagers don't get that. It's like when they fall and they get cranky, we slam them for it. Or, we don't support them well enough through that phase. And we're not holding that vulnerability very well for them. So we need, again, it's not just the parents at this point. So we need to start putting them into a community of people who will hold them up and guide them, and not tell them you need this or you need that, and not be afraid of them exploring different identities. Who you are at 16 isn't going to be who you are when you're 30 and you're 40, or even in your 20s. No one is the same as they were when they were 16. When they're an adult. So you've got to let the teenagers explore different sides of themselves without fear. They've got to explore how beautiful they are. They've got to explore new ideas. They've got to explore the world and get curious about it. And if we can make them feel safe in doing that and guided and say, look, that's not just like, there's no good and bad. It's just, if you do that, these are usually the consequences that come about. So you listen to your intuition, and we have to start teaching them to listen to their intuition. You listen to their intuition, and you teach them how to listen to their intuition, and they will make good choices because your body is always teaching you. And if you can teach your child how to connect to their intuition, then they're going to sail through life. But how to do that's another question, because you have to start doing it for yourself as a parent before we can ask our children to do that. And quite often what I see is that parents go into teenagehood with their child and they get challenged, and then they get overwhelmed, and then the child goes into fight or flight, and then they go into fight or flight, and then the whole family ends up in fight or flight. Everyone's in defense mode and everyone's in their own corners. And it's not unusual, but it's not helpful, because it's like, here's an emerging identity. They struggle some days and they're struggling to find themselves, and they're not going to succeed every day, and they're not going to succeed every month, and they're not going to succeed every year. So we need to help them with the most basic things of, who am I in the world? And they're going to try different things. So let them try different things and just be there when they fall, because they will fall. Teenagehood is about falling. And yes, we have to keep them safe, but you have to keep them safe through education now. And saying don't do drugs isn't going to help. Don't drink isn't going to help. We need to educate our children on exactly what to say when somebody says, do you want to try this? Or, hey, we're all doing this. Teach your child, sit down with your child and come up with a plan of exactly what to say. That's not going to make them feel like an idiot. That's going to make them still feel included, because no one wants to be the only sober person around a bunch of drunk people, especially when you're a teenager and you don't even know yourself yet. And so you're going to be pressured into it. But if you want to keep them safe, you educate them on exactly the things that happen. And you're usually, your family history will indicate what response you have when you're drunk as well. So you can say, look, our family history is this when we're drunk. So these are the things to watch out for. If you ever get into trouble, these are the things you need to be aware of. And if you want to say no, these are the things that you can say and come up with. Again, this gets scrambled. The decision making gets scrambled. So you're going to become impulsive at that point because there's too many options. But if you have a set thing to say or to do in that instance, it'll keep them safe. And then they know that that conversation is open as well with you, and it's not going to be full of shame, and they're not going to just be in trouble. They're going to be able to talk to you about what's happened and who was there and all that kind of stuff. So it's all about communication and connection. And it is freedom through communication, basically. But getting angry at them really doesn't help these days, because they're already under so much pressure that they will shut down and shut you out if you keep getting cranky with them. And kids really do just want to please their parents. They just, the world is overwhelming. They're not sure who loves them, so they need to know that their parents love them. And so many times I hear, they know that I love them. But in the same way, you're loving them, but you also can be shaming them. You shouldn't do that. Why would you do that? That was stupid, blah, blah, blah. And these are little things, things, that we just snap as parents, but it really does impact on a vulnerable teenager, the things that we say. The other thing I'll mention here is that teens will also pick up on the way that you speak to yourself. So what they'll do is they'll go, well, mum speaks to herself that way, or dad speaks to himself that way, or they speak to each other that way. Therefore, it's quite possible that they will speak to me that way. And so they will defend themselves before you've spoken to them in that way. So it's a time in life where, if we're going to become conscious parents, we need to consciously look at how we're talking to the world and how we're talking to each other. Another thing I'll mention here about conversation is that they overhear the conversations we have with our friends, and by the time you've hit teenagehood, you're probably already mimicking that, but your defenses will be like your parents' defenses. So if you're someone who will, cause drama with friends, you're either going to get a child who causes drama with friends or who completely wants to be the good person. You're going to get either way in that. So just be, again, not to shame anyone, we're all just human, but it's just a way of looking at, okay, how do we talk to each other? How do we defend our emotions around each other? And how do we defend ourselves in the world, from the person down the road to the people at work, what's our harshness level? Because if our harsh level is high, then the perception of a teenager is going to be the world is harsh and the world is against me. So it's, it's walking gently into the world and openly. I feel like I get off track sometimes, so I just have to recenter myself. So, I think we've lost connection with our teenagers. We step into fear mode with our teenagers, and that's my key thing here. We step into fear mode and we either disconnect or, if you're here, it's because you want to help your teenager. So, it will challenge you on all levels. That's the one thing I'll mention. And the one thing I'll mention is that if I get a teenager, particularly a girl, in and they've gone down the anxiety path or the drugs path or the sleeping around path or the eating disorder path, if I see the mother at the same time as the child, 99% of the time we'll sail through that. We'll sail through that easily because it's triggering both. But if I only see the child, alarm bells ring, because that tells me that the mother thinks that this is all the child's fault and this is just something the child has to deal with. Whereas in reality, a child in that situation is calling out for help and calling out for not attention, but calling out for help. It's saying, I'm overwhelmed. I need you to look at me and tell me I'm safe. But what often happens is that if they're entering down that alcohol path or that sleeping around path or the self-destruction path, anger and discipline and shame come down. You shouldn't. You You need to listen to me. This is just fear, right? It's adults' response to fear. And so what does then the child do? What can the child do in that instance? What can the teen do in that instance? You've got a child who is afraid of the world, who thinks the world doesn't like them. And then their parents are cutting them out at the same time. And all of a sudden you get this isolated teenager. So it's not about, in that point, it's not about putting the boundaries up again and molding them. It's about starting to have conversations about things and going, look, darling, you are beautiful. You are so beautiful. Let's go shopping and find some beautiful stuff for you. Let's find what makes you feel really feminine. Let's find what parts of your body you really enjoy. And let's find what sexuality means to you. It's wonderful to enjoy pleasure. It's wonderful to enjoy being courted. And, it's nice to have a bit of, we got to teach our teenagers that sex is about curiosity with each other and it's not about porn. And we've lost that. We've lost the art of talking about sex as well. And so you've got Tinder and Bumble and all that kind of stuff. And I've got teenagers who are on that. It's just nuts. And it's because they want to feel beautiful and they want to feel connected. But no one's teaching them how to. It's all just don't do that. And we know that abstinence doesn't work. The abstinence talk doesn't work. So we need to teach them, sex is about curiosity. And if someone's not being curious with you, if they're not wanting to get to know you first, then it's not going to be fun for either of you. It's not going to be nice sex. So they learn so much of this, of sex and how to do sex off porn, which isn't realistic, and it's no good for anybody. And so the boys don't know what to do and the girls don't know what should work, and the whole thing's just getting a bit messy, in my opinion. And so again, if we can teach them curiosity over everything, with their body, with who they are, with life in general, then I think we'll really nail it, because that's ultimately what the exploration of teenagehood is about. At the essence, it's about learning to be curious and learning to be powerful. I'm going to write that one down, because teenagehood is about being curious, or about learning how to be. Curious and powerful. If we can keep that as a core value, I think, that attitude into everything is going to keep them in an open mind and keep them connected to us and keep the conversations flowing. So what is a powerful choice right here? What would you do if you were curious? The other end of things is that there's all these teenagers coming out of school and they're 18, 19-ish, and then they hit a slump. It's almost like the world is too big and there's too many options and there's so many pressures. So school has the pressures of their own academic wants. And then the parents do or they don't. Most parents actually don't put a lot of pressure on their kids these days, but it's almost like the choice is too open. So we do have to guide them. Sorry, I just realised I've spelled teenagehood wrong on that. It's just me typing while I'm talking. So we do need to help guide them and say, look, you are really good at this. You are really good at that. These are the kind of paths you can go down. If you do want to go to uni, you go down that path. If you do want to travel, you can go down this path. And I think sometimes kids just come out feeling, it's all just too much. I don't know what to do. There's no one guiding me. Everyone just says, do whatever you want. And there's not enough conversations about how we did it either. We failed so many times. We tried that and then we failed. We tried that and then we failed. And we tried that and then we failed. And then eventually we got to where we are today. Whereas teenagers really do skip between, well, mum and dad are up here and they don't see the journey. And so many parents don't share their journey. And our communities aren't sharing our journey of our stories either. And so they're really lost as to, okay, how do I get to a functional adult? Or how do I have freedom and fun? And then, realizing that time actually does expand and you get, your early 20s and then your late 20s and then your 30s and your 40s to figure stuff out as well. So it's about explaining that to them as well. But what I will come back to is the fundamentals of anxiety in our teens is malnutrition, one big one, malnutrition. So many of our teenagers just don't have enough nutrients in their body. They're beige, they're eating beige, which means that you don't have all your micronutrients to build you up and to make you feel strong and to make you functional and to get your hormones flowing nicely. And they're growing and they're learning and they're changing and they need a lot of nutrition. So start with protein in the morning. Colour, good colours, don't let them skimp out on that. Don't buy the sugary stuff. Don't have it in the house anymore. Don't, they're going to go out and do whatever, but in the home, we eat really good food and have your healthy treats. It's really, really important to feed our children really well. And so often I see this kind of chronic fatigue hit, but what you've seen is you've seen children who have been malnutrition for years, then trying to grow and learn, and life gets on top of all of that, and so they're chronically fatigued. There's a lot of other stuff in chronic fatigue. By no means take just that out of that. And then you've got malnutrition, you've got way too much stimulation versus processing time. So there's too much information coming in. And when we were teenagers, we used to jump home and jump on the phone and talk to one person, or you used to go out with an animal or, you know, something like that, and go and spend your time after school processing. They don't do that anymore. They have chats and they have social media and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the information just keeps coming in and the defenses can't get let down. So by the time dinner comes and after school, and then they've got all this freaking homework in the afternoon. So again, more stimulation, more pressure, more stimulation, more pressure. And then they think, I'm just going to relax. And there's so many options out there now to relax. It's not a book or 2 channels of TV. It's, you know, Netflix, it's, you know, it's social media, it's, you know, all these other things, a PlayStation for boys. So there's just too much stimulation going in. So we need to make sure that our kids come back to processing time, come back to just having time by ourselves. And it's just about guiding in them in that and keep reminding about that. You know, again, you've just got to keep on there, keep bringing them back, keep bringing them back. It's not about stopping them from doing anything. It's about bringing them back, bring them back, bring them back, bring them back, bring them back. And what you're doing when you're bringing them back, then you're feeling that connection. And I really do believe that the kids who end up doing drugs and getting stuck in that are kids who, you know, particularly the highs and all of that, kids who are seeking connection with other people. And you've got the kids who just really enjoy a lot of connection. I'm not ever so worried about those ones. I'm worried about the kids who use the drugs for connection and then get stuck in that. And so often the parents are away all the time, you know, working, or they're so busy in their own world that they've kind of almost shut down. And I do see that a lot. The parents don't actually believe that they're shut down, but when they look at their life, work is the main priority, or something outside of their teenager is their priority. And it is a time where you actually do need to reprioritize back to the teenager. Because you know, I kind of see with childhood, you get this, you know, priorities, children, and then you get a little bit of freedom to explore stuff. But then as you come back to teenagehood, they need to be your priority again. So it's all about connection with me, but also connection with everybody else. You know, make sure you maintain all of those connections around them. If they don't have a male figure as a man, find one. If they don't have another female mother, and be willing to have them tell those people all the things that they're not going to tell you. You need that aunt or you need that uncle, you know, even in a figurative sense, that it's going to, you know, they're going to be held through life no matter what. And if they've got the shits with you, then they can go to somebody else and talk to them about it and get another perspective. Again, curiosity. What are all the perspectives? And that comes back to guidance as well. So we need to guide our children. I think, you know, we really do forget how vulnerable teenagehood is, how incredibly vulnerable it is. It's overwhelming. We've got so many pressures. And not only that, we've got this huge, crazy world out there, which at this time in our life, a lot of teenagers are actually looking ahead at the lives that their parents have lived and said, I actually don't want to choose that. I don't want that. But then when we're not exposing them to a lot of other options, we tend to do that as human beings. We isolate ourselves in communities which share the same values. But letting our teenagers roam the world is about letting them connect with other people with other values. So if you want to help guide them to make really good decisions on who else to associate with, gives them that freedom and curiosity to say, look, we do things this way, but look at those people and how they do things. And it's not using judgment, it's just saying, look, that's how they handle that, or that's how they handle that, or that's how they handle that. This is why we've chosen this for us. And this makes sense to us. But if you ever want to go out and talk to them about all of that, that's why they want sleepovers. That's why they want to go to their friends' houses all the time. And, keep connecting with them, bring them back, guide them. Does anybody have any questions about what I'm saying? Please feel free. I think with anxiety, what I've seen is a malnutrition, overwhelm, and no real okay guidance. So guidance as to, you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, this is the way that person did it, this is the way that person did it, and they did that at that age, and they did that at that age, and they did that at that age, and showing them the whole picture of life. And then you've got an empty body, so you get an empty ability to bounce back, so there's a lack of resilience there. And then you've got this too much stimulation, so that kind of triad there, I feel like really does cause anxiety in teenagers. With self-image, it's letting them explore who they are and what's really wonderful about them. So with self-image, we tend to get locked on one or two things, and we only see that thing. And so we really narrow in. So you'll find, there's a girl who doesn't like their nose, and then they'll look at another girl and only see their nose. But that girl is okay with her nose. But she's worried about her stomach. So she looks back at the other girl and sees only her stomach. And this one hasn't even thought about their stomach. I hope that makes sense. But it's like we only see what we focus on. So it's about pointing out lots of different beauties and what it feels like to be beautiful. And it's letting them explore that. So it's like, okay, and it's taking them seriously. It's not just brushing them off. Okay, so my teenager is concerned about putting on weight. Okay, one, if they're early teenagehood, be aware that you're going to put on weight in order to get tall and in order to get boobs. So they will get thicker before they get taller and voluptuous. So that's normal. But what they can do about it is they can make sure they're eating really nutritious, beautiful, yummy food, and educating them on why the body puts on weight. So the body puts on weight because of stress, and it puts on weight because of sugar and toxins. So not real food, basically. So the body will put on weight when you're stressed or if you're eating not real food. So if you're eating real food and you're looking after your stress levels, then you won't put on as much. You'll lose weight a really nice way, and you'll be looking after yourself and you'll be nourishing yourself. And when you're comparing yourself to others, make sure that you're seeing the whole picture, because these are the things I see in you. I see you have beautiful eyes. I see that you have beautiful hands. I see that you have all of this, and there are actually people out there who don't like that about themselves. And reminding them that most people have a self-image problem to some point. So realizing that, okay, well, you might be worried about that, but that person's worried about that. But also get them to connect to other people and care for other people as well. So I think the main thing with Year 9 that we could really be doing for them is teaching them how to care for other humans more than themselves. It's a very egocentric age, and it's all about, I might be different. So if we're connecting with people who need us more, then we actually forget about ourselves. Much like how Year 5 did the buddy program, I think we should be doing something like that for our Year 9ers. What do they have to offer the world? What is their talent? What is their gift? What can they do that's kind and open and can connect them to other people in a way that fills up their hearts? And if you've got a filled up heart, you don't worry about how you look as much because you feel connected to people. People have a self-image problem because they think someone's looking at me and judging me. If you reframe that into someone's looking at you and listening to you and seeing your kindness, then all of a sudden the self-image goes away and you're connecting with people who actually really, really value who you are. So one person has asked me here as well, how do you explain to your teenager that you don't have to please everyone and you don't have to worry about what all others think of them? It is important to them that what other people think of them. So we need to start teaching them, okay, right, well, you are worried what everyone thinks of you because human beings, okay, here's a really interesting thing. So human beings are pack animals. And if you're on the inside of a pack, then you are safe. If you're on the outside of the pack, that you are unsafe. We are biologically wired to believe that. So when we teach them that, we teach them you're wired to be part of a pack because you're a human being. And so you want to be part of the pack. So your way of being part of the pack at the moment is to please everybody. But that's kind of impossible. So you need to choose who you please. And first you please yourself. And then when you're happy, that will overflow into other people. Now, there might also be a thing there about forgiveness as well. So how harsh are they judged on things by the people around them? Why have they set up pleasing people as a defense mechanism? Is that something that's a family trait that they've learned, or is it something that they've had to learn as a protection point of view? So usually it's a way to avoid conflict. So why do you want to please everybody? You know, what is it that you've learned in life? And they're not going to actually reflect on this, but you can reflect on them for it. What is it that they need from people? And if you can find out what they actually really need from people, then you can help them get it. Again, guide them to get that. So I want to please people because I want to feel included. Well, the truth is that you're included and people are actually quite forgiving, you know, and you might not believe that yet, but most people are worried about making a mistake, and most people are worried about embarrassing themselves, and most people are worried about hurting someone in some way, shape or form. But most people are also quite forgiving of that. And they will still like you if they see that it's done from the heart. And you're not going to be perfect because you're a teenager, and the whole point of being a teenager is to screw up most of the time. And so you've got to remember that everybody's screwing up. And if you're kind to other people, then they will be kind back generally if you're surrounding yourself with the right people. And just being honest with them, yeah, you're going to worry about what other people think of you, but can we make that voice really small? You know, can we think of all the other things out in the world that people like about you, that you don't have to please them all the time. They're actually just going to feel connected to you. Another thing there is they might actually not be feeling very connected to other people. Or they don't know how to connect from the heart. So working with them on that and introducing other people into their lives who can really do that with them, whether it's relatives or other teenagers or older people, find a way in your life to make them feel really connected to other people. And then they're not going to need the pressures of the peers so much. They might also, another thing, teenagers, very complex beings. They might actually be struggling with a part of themselves that they can't accept. And as I've said that, you've probably connected to that if that's true. And so help them connect to people who are similar in that way. So again, you're exploring that horizontal identity. So for instance, going really basic, if you're deaf, making sure that they're connecting to other kids who are deaf or other deaf communities. And then they won't be worried about needing to fit into that peer group so much because they have other options to explore. And they know that they have other people who get them as well. I hope that answers your question. Are there any other questions? So again, I think, if we can teach our kids to be curious and how to be powerful in the world, pointing out all the different stories, storytelling, then that's education. It's emotional processing. It helps them guide, feel like they can get some guidance for themselves as well by hearing stories, introduce them to books, all that kind of stuff as well, or podcasts or TED Talks, or, there's so much out there now as a way of introducing them to all these different people and all these different things. Even Netflix series and documentaries and all that kind of stuff. That we can show them, these are the different ways to do life, and you've got to pick what's right for you, and you can get curious about what's right for you, and you can try that and it might not work, and you can try that and it might not work. But again, remembering that parenting kind of stops at around 14. And so you're guiding them from that point on, and you've got to let them fall. And you've got to let them make their own mistakes, and you've got to let them rest as well. If they've gone to the point where they can't get to school, let them rest. So the schools will find ways to work around it. I've got kids who work on a flexible timetable as long as they're handing their assignments and they turn up to school when they can. Or they get picked up at a certain time, or, work with your school or work around your family and see what works well for you all. But if they're at the point where they can't get to school, let them rest. It means that they need connection, and it means that they need processing time. And it means that they need better health as well. So you can find someone to help you do that, or you can do that within your family as well. But I hope that that answers a lot around anxiety. What else is actually coming up? Sorry, I will mention social media. So it's not about cutting it out altogether. It's about helping them navigate it. And so making sure that they know that anything past 8 p.m. usually isn't awesome. So turn off your phone at 8 p.m. Look at it in the morning, because usually things go bad after 8, 9 p.m. where they're just tired and ratty at that point. And so they don't need to expose themselves to stuff after 8 p.m. It's usually when, all those nasty things will get thrown back and forth. Be willing to just cut it off for a while, knowing that most things will just blow over if you cut off social media for a couple of weeks. And so knowing that's just a couple of weeks, no one's going to die. You're not going to be disconnected from anyone or anything. So just, cut yourself from social media for a couple of weeks, and most things will disappear. It's when things engage that things really go downhill with social media. Schoolwork anxiety. That's a tough one, because I have the opinion that a lot of it actually doesn't matter. I also have the opinion that we're not teaching our kids exactly why they're learning the stuff they're learning. We've forgotten, English is there to teach us communication. It's to teach us different perspectives. It's to teach us stories. It's to teach us storytelling. And I think a lot of that's been lost. I think a lot of why they're learning what they're learning has been lost, and it's become all about the assignments and the exams. And we've lost the curiosity with learning. We've lost the why do we want to know this stuff? And we need to re-engage them that way. So, find a way to talk to them about all of that as well. And about why schooling is so important. And the assessments and the exams are, you know, ridiculous. But also you can't fail 8, 9, 10, really. You know, as long as you turn up, you can't fail it. So don't let them burn out before year 11. You know, if they don't hand in assignments, don't get worried. Don't get worried. Just, you know, that's fine. You know, there's stuff in life that happens, and you can't be on it all the time, and growing and dealing with teenagehood and dealing with vulnerability and life all at the same time. So if you don't hand in an assignment, okay, no worries, but let's try for the next one, because what this is doing is it's teaching you in adulthood how to keep up with expectations of other people, and what are your defenses going to be around meeting those expectations, and how do you push yourself into uncomfortable places. So it's teaching them the broader understanding of all of those things as well. Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me, or, you know, my website, emmasternberg.com.au. You can find all my contact details there. And if you have a particularly challenging teenager, I would love to meet them, because I really do love working with teenagers. They really do just want someone to understand them and to be okay with them, and not be fearful of who they're going to be, because they're fearful of who they're going to be. They don't know who they're going to be. So take all the fear out of it. Start introducing stories and curiosity, and how to be powerful in the world, and how, you know, what are your different options. And you failed that time. No worries. Let's try that mindset thing again. You know, the mindset thing's all about repetition. So these are the things we do. Introduce them to lots of different people and lots of different things. But I hope that helps. And if you have any other questions, let me know. It's recorded, so I'm going to actually send this out as well. But thank you, everybody. I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.